Okay. Good afternoon, people. First, I just want to apologize for the delay. I woke up this morning and my voice was gone. And so I've been just drinking some tea and everything, and so hopefully it's come back. Um, okay. I think hopefully I'm still live. Hey DJ Moss. Oh, hey Dan Christopher, thank you so much for subscribing. Hopefully you guys, can add to this discussion. I think this is something that we really need to talk about. And so yeah, me and more of my excuses, and then I had to be technological savvy, and I think I figured out a good way to do this is to stream the live from my tablet, and then that way I don't have the same problems as people calling me on my phone. So at the end of the stream, please let me know if you guys like this information. If you agree with it, I would love to hear some feedback. All feedback is welcome as long as you're respectful, right? So I thought we would talk today about mental health in the Black community. So that's the career field that I am currently in. That is something that has been very passionate to me, even before I knew that it was a passion to me. I was the kid that everybody asked for advice. I was the one that would go and ask the adults, like, okay, so why do we do it this way? So then when I find out that there's a whole way to get paid for doing so, that is the career field that I ended up in. I've always had a helping spirit because before I found psychology, I wanted to be a pediatrician. I wanted to make sure kids were, healthy and okay. As a kid that was in and out of the hospital a lot, for medical stuff, I just kind of thought that the way people talk to and about you overhearing that when the adults think that you're not listening is something that causes a lot of problems for us internally and mentally. So, one thing that normally ties into mental illness is substance abuse. So, I wanted to touch on a little bit of both of those today. And then throughout the week, I'll be posting some educational videos on how it happens and what it means. I noticed that we call each other mentally ill a lot and we call each other retarded a lot. That is kind of watering down the diagnosis. And then you have people who are otherwise helpful in the community who can't do anything anymore because they're accepting this label now. Oh, hi, Mind's Eye. I'm sorry about earlier, but it's been, rescheduled. So hopefully you can come back in during this stream. Okay. So I want to start off by talking about what mental illness is. It's a state of not being at ease. We all feel times of being sad. We all feel times of not being at our best emotionally. The mental component is when your brain does not work according to what we all, the majority determines normalcy. So when you get a sample size, the point of that, when you're doing research to figure out what's normal, the point of that is if I just throw a rock and hit somebody, how likely is it that I'm going to get someone that has this specific answer for me? So it doesn't necessarily just in and of itself say that this is the majority unless you poll everyone in that group. That's not always time efficient. That's not always labor efficient. So sometimes we just grab a sample of random people. And the answer is that if this is a random sampling, then the likelihood that I got a true representative of the bigger picture is high. I disagree with that, but in grad school I was told that hey, this is what works. Anyway, so I've noticed that there are three different stages that people in the Black community have when it comes to emotional uneasiness. We suffer a lot with anger, with depression, or with anxiety. And so to define those things, anger would be the source of aggression. It normally tells you what you think is right versus what you think is wrong, because we have to take as a given that we have an inherent belief that most people should barring any barriers, do the thing that is right. We want to believe that everybody's willing to pitch in, to chip in, to make sure that everyone's okay. Well, that's not necessarily accurate, but that's what we like to believe. And that's what we're all taught. So when that doesn't happen, most people will experience a feeling of anger. When your blood starts to boil, your face, your ears are hot, things of that nature. The physiological responses, those will be considered any part of any anger emotion. Anxiety. This is the freeze, fight, or flight response when you are faced with danger. It tells you what you think is safe versus not safe. And sometimes that is something that's in the future that has not happened. Sometimes it's something in the past that you fear is going to represent itself. Anytime you have a sense of panic, of excessive worry, of fears and phobias, those are things that are telling your brain that, hey, there's a threat to my safety and survival. And then the last one that I think that Black people have a higher propensity to is depression. So the interesting thing about depression, oh, hi, Kenny Kojo, how are you? Oh, and thanks. I picked this picture because Caribbean Fire asked specifically for this picture, and he's not even here. Imagine that. But thank you guys. Um, so in terms of depression, the interesting thing about depression is it is anger turned inward. Anger and depression are two sides of the same coin. Anger is when you are placing the blame for right or wrong outside of yourself. And the depression is when you're placing, the value of good or bad or right or wrong within yourself. We get sad. And so I do believe that us as a whole entire race and culture, we have true and accurate reasons to feel angry, depressed, or anxious. The problem is we're staying trapped in that environment. We're not trying to do anything to better ourselves to come out of it. We're accepting it as that's just life. And if we do that, that now becomes our new normal. And the response to that is when something like that is not happening in your life, you go out and create it because you now have the urge and you're drawn to things that will bring in discomfort. We deal with that a lot as a people. And, those of us who have either bounced back or haven't been affected to that standpoint, we don't understand our brothers and sisters who go out and seek these things. And then we make matters worse. We tell them, oh, just get over it. We tell them, you're evil, you're bad. We condemn them and write them off and throw them away. And that's my problem with the people that say, let the community burn. That doesn't help anything. And now, instead of just sitting down being silent, you are now becoming part of the problem. You are now one more person that's telling this individual that they have nothing to lose, that they have nothing to live for. Why do you think that's going to be anything positive that comes out of that? We have a lot of issues that I see in the news that I think are related to mental illness. There was on a different panel earlier today, I can't remember where I saw it, but a guy, rightfully so, attributed women who are home wrecking to the women who, once they get love and protection, they then keep it away from other women and then they dangle it in the faces of other women. I just happened to be up late last night, and I was on YouTube after one stream ended, and I saw another one that was live, a guy that I hadn't, been on his page. I'm not really sure what's going on with him. He has 0 upvotes and so many downvotes. And he was ranting about him being able to help other people in the community. Now, I'm not here to say whether he was right or wrong or whether he was telling the truth or not. Oh, hey, Sheila E., how are you? Welcome. What I am here to say is that he kind of has a point, but I don't know the circumstances behind it. So I'm not going to get too in depth in what I saw in that video because, yeah, then things went south from there. What I am saying is that if you tell some woman, haha, look what I got and you can't have any, I'm better than you, what do you think she's going to do? Why do women act so shocked when the woman now does everything in her power to, dissolve that union that's protecting you so much? I think that if Black people weren't so excited and happy to tell other people, haha, I'm better than you because I have something you don't, then I do believe that at this point, as adults, we need to accept the fact that that is now drawing in more negativity into your life. And you know why? Because you're using a negative thought process. That is not helpful. That is an undesirable thought process. You are still being masculine and in your competition spirit at that moment. And that's why you're drawing competition. Okay, so Dane Christopher, I might be able to tell you later, but I don't want to announce it in the stream because, I don't know what that guy has going on, and I'm staying out of that. But what I am saying is that there were a lot of accusations about mental illness. And I think that we need to understand the difference between mental illness, something that is going to require ongoing treatment, versus just a situational thing that is normal. As Black people, we try to cut off our emotional, responses to things. The only thing that does is make us numb and make us more willing and capable to go through the pain. So then you don't get support for movements that say, let's get Black people to be treated like human beings in this country. You know why? Because they don't feel that they're human beings. They feel that that's just life. It's going to happen anyway. And that you're weak for needing to be treated like a human being. I believe that this country has not fulfilled its constitution, that all men are created equal. Now, initially, they weren't talking about us as a community, but then later on, they added us into that. So therefore, we are now still entitled by their own writings. So why do we not feel the need to want to fight for that? So how many people understand what the parity law is? That is something that your insurance company has to comply with in order to give you mental health and substance abuse treatment that's on par or equal to your medical treatment. There's even a part of the mental health field that focuses on the medical model. So it treats substance abuse and it treats mental illness as if it were a physical concern. And why? Because we're much more willing to accept a physical concern. I believe that we as a people overall, as a species, have elevated past only looking at the physical. We are the one species on this planet that has the potential to think of things in mental and spiritual constructs. We don't have to be reduced just specifically to our physical. We have elevated. We are higher. We have dominion over the other ones. So we are the ones that are responsible for making sure that we utilize that. So I am happy that we now have the parity law. But how many people are willing to access that type of treatment? Not very many. If you go out in the course of a day, I'm not saying that you're going to meet everybody that has a mental illness, but you meet a lot of people that have mental illness and you can see it, and you meet a lot of people that have it and you can't see it. When we find ourselves questioning, well, why would the person do this? What kind of person does that? Usually, that's why. How many people do we know that are walking around with mental illness and they don't even know it? Well, they do all of these things and they use their ability to convince other people that this is correct until we all just look insane. So I want to talk a little bit about what each one of those things actually is and what it looks like for us as Black people. And my hope is that when you notice these things, you will call them out correctly. But also, I'm going to say your job is not to condemn that person. If you call it out, your job is not to leave that person. Your job now, once you do that, is to talk to them from a supportive place about getting the help that they need. I've struggled with these things as well, and I believe we all have. So anxiety in and of itself, right? It's considered one of the unpleasant emotions. It's because we view a threat of some kind. And our normal tendency is to get it to dissipate, to alleviate it, to get rid of it. Most people don't like being in a state of anxiety. What that means for the Black community, We view that as being smart. Why do you think we view anxiety as being smart? That becomes our new normal, right? Well, we are a culture that has had lots of threats around every corner. There are lots of stories about our people before we had the ability to inform other people of what was going on that were literally doing what they were supposed to do. They were in the right place. They were learning. They were reading a book. They weren't hurting anyone. They weren't actively being a threat, but they were viewed as such anyway. So we panic. We worry excessively because that's what we were all taught to do. We were taught that that's a smart thing, that if you happen to believe that you could live this life and you could be peaceful and calm and have the absence of anxiety, that you're naive, that it's a fairy tale. When I talk to Black people, I get told that I'm living in a dream world, that that's never going to happen. Because I do believe that we can create our own peaceful utopia. The problem is there's not enough people who also believe that are willing to put their time and effort and money where their mouth is. We would have to do work to get it there. No other culture has just been given anything. And yes, we've done work and we deserve it, but if they're not giving it to us, we still got to fight to get it, right? There are some people that feel like we have to do it fist to fist combat. There are other people that feel like we need to do it through legislation. We have a place for all those things. So what I want you guys to take out of that is that if you are hyper aware, it means you're looking everywhere all of the time on guard. That places stress in your body. That is not a good place to be. If you have certain things that you avoid, if you're constantly irritable and restless, there are times where that's helpful and there are times where that's not part of anxiety. But if you notice this is happening a whole lot, a good idea would be to sit down and think about, just survey your environment and see whether or not you are subconsciously picking up on something that might be considered a threat there. Our body, our subconscious, it picks up on things that we may not consciously be aware of. So if you walk in and you see something in that room that might be considered a threat, like let's say you see a sharp corner with like a little nail sticking out or something. You notice it and you take inventory. Whether you ask the person about it or not, you still make sure that you remember when you're walking in that area to be careful. That is going to place you in a smaller version of hyper awareness. You're paying attention. You're making sure that you don't get hurt by this nail sticking out. You may even ask them, why is this here? But how many of us will be able to be calm before we see something placed around that to make sure that we don't get hurt while we're there? A lot of us will still be on hyper arousal while we're in that room until we leave, and for a time being afterwards. Those who don't see it in time and actually get scraped by it, there's a time period after that where you're checking things that have sharp corners now so that doesn't repeat itself. So this is a form of anxiety, but can you imagine what it's like having an anxiety disorder? It means your subconscious is picking up on things out of order. You're living this way a lot and more than is necessary. In Black culture, we view a whole lot of things as a threat. And now the threat is not from outside, it's within us. When we walk past another Black person, do we automatically believe that this person is going to, if they're bigger than us? How many of us have friends that are all bigger than us, right? Or they're stronger, or they have a bad attitude? We kind of handle them with kid gloves. A lot of us have that one family member that nobody can say anything to because they're going to flip out. That, even though you might feel that you have a plan for safety, there's still a part of you that is living hyper aware around this person. It has permeated throughout our lives, and a lot of times we don't even notice it. It's just our new normal. So, depression. Every time you hear someone say, oh, they're not going to give us anything, the man is against me, I'm not going to get that job. They only like their own people. Why can't my people love me? These are statements of hopelessness, which is one of the symptoms of depression. There's hopelessness and helplessness. There's low mood where you're kind of down and out. You might even cry. But there is a pervasive thought process of not being cared for, of losing or missing out on things. There is resulting low self-esteem, low self-efficacy, where you don't believe that you're capable of good things. You don't believe that you have the skills or the talent to win at something. These are all symptoms of depression. Now, do we sometimes, as a people, just live a normal life? Do we get disappointed? Do we get down sometimes? Yes. But if you're living in a state where that's your constant thought process, and I notice a lot of people that every conversation that they have to work that in there. And even if it's not every conversation, if you're over here on YouTube and you have a whole lot of comments and a whole lot of videos about how the people that are in a group to which you belong aren't worth anything, you do realize that that is depressing. That is sounding like depression. You might possibly, because why are you gravitating towards those conversations? And even if those conversations are everywhere, then that means you can't fight that feeling and you're going to pick up those thought process and you are now feeling sad and down and out. The factors are different, but the result is the same. You still are in a depressed state at that moment because you can't find what you believe will alleviate the sadness. A person who's in a place of depression is going to be gravitating towards happiness, the opposite of. And then finally, the anger. In Black culture, we have a tendency to cover up all of our emotional states with anger. It comes out as anger. For us, likely there's some emotion underneath that that is not anger. If you feel, oh, well, I could just cut you off and throw you away, that is a type of anger. If you feel, well, I could kill you, I could beat you up, that is a type of anger. We in Black culture are faced with that every day because what person that cares about themselves is going to be okay being discriminated against, is going to be okay being insulted, disrespected, disparaged? No one, that's not a happy thing. I have yet to find anybody that wakes up and says, hey, I can't wait till somebody rob me today. I wish somebody just shoot me down today. Nobody says that. So it's not a happy place. And I think that we need to stop telling everybody that it's okay. And I think we need to understand, because that's what I think is stopping the unity, is the fact that we're telling one another that we shouldn't have an emotion towards that it's okay, that it's part of life, that you can't change it. Just get used to it. That's why we don't have unity. Because what's the point? It no longer matters. So my last part of this monologue is related to substance abuse in the Black community. So there is a difference between use, abuse, and addiction. So let's see. My personal issue is with frustration and anxiety. Well, you know what? And I'm glad that you're able to say that out loud, because I think that we all struggle with one or more of these things. If people are honest with themselves, they will be able to admit that, because it's, oh, hey, Mr. RJ, I didn't see you come in. Because if we don't talk about this, if we act like it's just not there, like it's not true, then we can't complain. And then that's gonna, all of these different movements that are happening right now, you're undermining them by saying, oh, well, nothing happened to us, we're just perfectly fine. No, we're not. If we step back outside of these groups that we have that make us feel good, if we step out of that and we just look at the community as a whole, we will be able to see that this is widespread dysfunction. The way we view one another, if we're able to just throw each other away like that, we don't value each other. So my question is, for the person who gets to be on top, right? What makes you think that after you shun everybody else, that the dominant culture is going to accept you as well. You do realize that that's not going to happen. If you kill off every other black person on the planet, what's to stop them from killing you too? But okay, so back to substance abuse, right? So use. There are lots of things that are on this planet that give us a wonky feeling when we ingest them. There are things that are created in a lab for our entertainment because we want to recreate a certain feeling. There are things that we do to ourselves that doesn't involve ingesting anything, but it gives us a feeling, a happiness. Substance abuse is prevalent in our community because we all have something that we're trying to escape. There's a daily life reminder of something that makes us unhappy, so we have other resources cut off from us. How many of us, like, let's say your coping skill was just listening to the cool breeze. I mean, like listening to waves crash and feeling a cool breeze. Well, if you can't afford to go to the beach every time something makes you upset, then you're probably just gonna, take something at that moment, whether it's pills that are prescribed or over the counter, whether you use them against doctor's orders or whatever, it doesn't matter. Something is helping you get out of your reality. And let's face it, Black people have a lot of things that we face on a daily that make us unhappy. This is not a community that is set up for us. So therefore, just existing, sometimes there are going to be things that hurt you because it's not made for you. So we have a propensity to use substances, both illicit and both those and others that are condoned. That's just use. If you hang out with your friends and you drink socially, or you might smoke when you're on vacation or what have you, that's just use. Now there's abuse, where you're using something out of its intended purpose, and you're doing so regularly because you're at this moment, you're now responsible for that behavior because you're avoiding dealing with the thing that upsets you. So coping skills are important, and substance abuse is one that's not a helpful coping skill, but it is effective. It works. For a coping skill to be helpful to you, it needs to A, be effective, meaning working. B, it needs to be available to you as needed. And C, it needs to not cause you harm. Oh, hey, Raining Woman. Thank you for coming in. How often do we have something that fits all three of those criteria? Substance abuse doesn't fit all three of those criteria, but it fits the most important one, is that it works for a second. Now, the hope is while you're inebriated, you're not causing more problems, but it becomes abuse once you start to overlook the thing that placed you in a need for a coping skill. If you lost a job and you decide that you're going to go home after work and have a drink, fine. But if you wake up and then drink and not fill out job applications, now that is abuse because you're using it inappropriately. You're using it to bandage something that you are letting fester. Addiction is where you literally cannot live without it. So if we start going around calling people that have one drink an addict, that's not going to end well. One, for our community, but also for understanding of our consciousness as human beings. We have to be willing to be truthful. We have to be willing to set these boundaries and be accurate. Are you going to help I'm trying to figure out if the person that lost the job and they get home and they have a drink and then they wake up the next morning and they fill out job applications. There's nothing wrong with that. Is it preferable? I'm not telling you that that's how you should handle all your problems, but what I am saying is you haven't yet messed up your entire life at that moment. But people around you who have that thought process that you're now an alcoholic, they're now going to intervene and do things based on one action that they saw you do. So if you get up the next morning and you're filling out job applications and you're sober and you're focused and you sit down and you think and you work out a plan, that drink that you had the night of is not what's costing you your life. So it's not abuse because you're not running from the actual problem. And it's not addiction because you're not throwing your life away to chase it. That was a coping skill. There are better coping skills that could happen that you could have gotten to. But we as Black people don't really have access to a lot of stuff. Do we have access to a lot of supportive people that would understand that, things happen? If it was your fault that you made a mistake and you're now getting ready to move forward and not let that happen again? Do they understand that, hey, maybe it wasn't your fault? We still aren't in a place where we just have things handed to us and we're allowed to keep it. So maybe that was the only coping skill that was available at the time and you needed an immediate relief. Okay. It's not preferable, but you're in good company. There's a lot of people in this country that will do that, that believe that that's an okay pastime. So in terms of substance abuse, I do think that it definitely ties into our emotional state, but it's prevalent because of the resources that we don't have access to. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about is I wanted to give some examples of how that's impacted my life personally. And then if by the end of that, if anybody wants to come up and share their story, we will. But if not, we'll go ahead and end it because we're already at the 30-minute mark. So personally, I have struggled with all four of these concerns. In terms of depression, I feel sad when there's a lot of fighting and arguing with me, around me in my environment. I belong to several groups. These are the in groups that I'm in, right? I'm a woman, I'm Black, I'm an adult, I'm degreed, I'm single, and it just snowballs from there, right? These groups have lots of infighting with one another. Who gets to be the representative? Because people who are outside of those groups want like one sentence as an explanation that they want to just fit everybody in that group so that when they meet you, they know what they're dealing with. And it's laziness. That is very lazy, in my opinion. However, it is what it is. It's the life we live, right? Each one of those groups has a certain stigma. And so it makes me sad that all of those stigmas come from a place of negativity, a place of a person outside of those groups feeling threatened in some manner. Any of those groups in and of themselves would not necessarily be threatening to people who are not of those groups. It's a lot of rhetoric that's passed down, and we don't know if it was one specific instance or if the person who began these, value assessments was pure heart, whether they were telling the truth. We have no idea and no way of knowing. It's just what we wake up every day to live. And so the fighting amongst the people in those groups sometimes makes me sad. It says to me that you've given up on trying to make anything positive out of not only your life, but you now want to drag in all the people that share this group with you. So when I see two Black people fighting, it's saddening. Two women fighting, to adults, to single mothers, or if I see any of these people that are going outside of the group attacking people and doing certain things, that makes me sad because I, believe that it's not appropriate to do and won't solve anything, and B, will subsequently get judged by that as well. There's going to be something in my life that's cut off from me because of those actions. The anger that I feel at times is when I see somebody being just thrown away or cast aside. I really do believe that that's not part of our purpose here on this planet. I do believe that we're going to have to answer for that when it's all said and done. And I believe that there are a lot of selfish people that are concerned with the here and now, stepping on somebody else to get something that you want. And it's a whim, it's fleeting, it's not even a need. But if you are a person that could literally throw somebody away and treat them like garbage, no matter what they've done, it's a human being. Now, they can be placed in an area where they are no longer a threat to other people. But if you can throw them away, that to me just says, one, you would do that to me. And then two, how long before you end up having to do that to yourself? So it angers me because it's a distraction. It gets in the way of us creating our utopia. It's not a fairy tale because it's possible. It's just no one wants to do the work because then they would have to give up their status that they've earned in the system that is. We have a lot of people in our culture that want to keep the system the way it is because they were able to find a way to benefit from it. But you built that on the back of somebody else. It's not yours. And if that person wants to come back and take it back, they absolutely can. It's a house of cards. So for them to throw everyone else's life away for something fleeting like that does anger me. The anxiety. There have been some traumatic experiences in my life that were not of my doing. And so the anxiety is when I meet people who remind me of all of the things that I am being told was a red flag. It won't happen twice. These are things that I think a lot of other people deal with, and that it should be okay for them to say that. Because only if they say it will we be able to change that so that the next generation does not have to go through it as well, so that we don't keep repeating this cycle. And finally, in terms of substance abuse. So I have never been an addict of any types of substances. I have used substances. And now I have people around me that believe that I abuse those things. I disagree, but let's just, say if I use alcohol in a higher than normal frequency for their liking, the actual definition that means it's time to go get treatment would be when it starts to get in the way of me being responsible and doing what I'm supposed to do and taking care of all that I was assigned. Absent of that, I'm not different than any other person that enjoys a cocktail every now and then. That's specifically how I view it. The reason for that is because grown people get to decide what's fun to them. We don't get to pick and choose which addictions are okay. Anything that you are abusing, meaning using it to avoid the real problem, or either addicted to where you can't live without, so it's now in control of you instead of you being in control of it, whether it's gambling, whether it's sex. And I believe that there are a lot of people who abuse the privilege of intimacy with another person. All of those things are bad when and if they go beyond moderation. Use responsibly. There should never be a time where the acquisition of the time spent using and or recovering from the effects of something is the most important and the most prevalent thing in your life. For instance, in terms of child support, when I hear these comments, has anybody ever thought about it in a manner of you were abusing the action of having sex with someone? You did not make sure that all your business was taken care of beforehand. And now you are paying child support for 18 years, recovering from the effects of an action that you did that was illicit. Now, should the person rake you over the coals in child support? No, because they should have their own consequences as well. But what I am saying is that there was a behavior on the part of both people involved that was being abused. When I tell men that they should not be so promiscuous, I'm not taking away the responsibility of the woman. What I'm saying is she can't get to you It would be like someone walking up to you offering you a crack pipe. You would say no, right? Okay. So why couldn't you say no to that? Testosterone, it's interesting that it only targets illicit sexual activity. Because see, if you know that that's how you feel, then when you're young and spry and have all of that, you need to be willing to pick a woman and compensate her for being your new high. And then that way, while you're doing things in the community, when you've gotten your feel, she could be at the home making sure things are taken care of. But we tell young men not to settle down early because they have their run of the world. You can have all the testosterone you want, but why does it have to be spread between the entire community? Why can't you just pick one woman and build? So that excuse to me doesn't matter. I'm not buying it. But I do realize that we're not there yet as a culture. Men are not going to want to hear that. In terms of women, let's just use makeup, right? I don't know if there's any women that are, addicted to makeup, but there are some women that will not leave their house without a full face, complete. They don't have any skin disorders or anything that they're trying to cover up. They just enjoy it and they believe that it makes them enhanced. When you get to the point where you can't leave your house without having a full face of makeup, that is a problem. You are running away from an underlying issue. Yes, Dane Christopher, that is absolutely true. I do not approve of the way the judicial system is as it stands anyway. So I agree with you. I just was using that as the example. The woman also has the duty to not run you through the coals in court, but she can't do that if you don't give it to her. So if I know that women aren't going to listen to me, maybe when I talk to men and I tell you that there are some women out here that would use that for evil, then maybe you would listen when I say, don't give them access. I don't want this to sound like I'm admonishing you guys. What I am saying is that it is a potential. Women do that. I can agree with you. I don't think y'all are making it up. But the answer to that, they're not going to listen to me, because if they have a chance to get money out of you in the court system versus me telling them, hey, you had a part in that too. One of those things they're going to say, yeah, I know, but guess which one? So I just stopped even talking about that with them. So you're absolutely correct. And let's just be real. This justice system was not meant for us. They did not make this with us in mind. This was all about them and keeping their wayward people in line. They had gave no thought about us ever even entering that justice system. And now that we're there, it's not something that's going to be conducive to our existence because it wasn't made with us in mind. Everything that is what we are as a Black people and everything that we've gone through and where we are today conflicts heavily with the justice system because it doesn't take any of those things into account. A common thing that when people go into court that they say is, I don't have the money for that. Well, yeah, that's because it was designed for people that had resources that could do those things. It was meant to just be uncomfortable and a punishment, not to actually kill the people that went through it. It's going to kill us because we don't have any of the stuff that they have when they go in there. So I personally would vote for us to stay out of the justice system altogether, but we can't do that because there's going to be that one person that just keeps pushing and pushing and pushing. So, I hope that clears up my thought process. So, with that being said, there's no takers in terms of coming up. So later this week, I'm going to upload some other videos that I feel like will be educational. And then next weekend, I want to talk to a guy with questions about what women need to understand about men, but one that's respectful, no red pill guys. I want somebody that's still involved in the community. Otherwise, like if you're out of the community and you say let it burn, what difference does it make? We're not talking to you. And then I also want to talk about the culture that we would like to see going forward. So that's my plans for the live streams for next weekend. But during the week, I'm going to post up some videos with things that I've been thinking about that I think would help. I got it from my experience in life, my career, and things that other people have talked to me about that they would like. So we'll see. Well, thanks guys for coming in. I really appreciate the support and everything. And I guess I will see you guys at another time. Bye.